you know of anyone that can get me an interview there or might have a job for me? And the last one is the interview itself. And that's when you're talking to employers, particularly not with HR department. I guess early on in this session I should have asked, are there any HR people? However, I can tell you from past presentations, I've had a lot of HR people in the group, and most of them have agreed with my attitude toward HR. And most of them, when I talk about what happens to your resume, and it's got about a 6-second shelf life, 6 to 10 seconds in front of that person before they, either you're in or you're out. I mean, it's brought tears to a couple of their eyes because they'd been looking for a job for several months, and one lady told me she's really struggling, and she was a vice president with a large company here. She says, you know, I feel so bad about that. You know, if I ever get back in the fold, I'll never do that again in interviewing people. So that's why you try to avoid HR. It's not that they're bad people, they're overwhelmed with the whole interview process and filling the jobs. They're also a little bit intimidated because overall they do not have bottom line responsibility, so they're measured in a very subjective fashion. And they're afraid if they don't present the perfect candidate to the hiring manager that they'll lose their job. It's important that you know that you interview with employees, not employers. We keep talking about employers, and yeah, we're interviewing with employers, but the reality of it is you're interviewing with employees. And the reason I say that's important to you is if you get turned down, you didn't get really turned down by the company. You got turned down by an employee. You know, employees or employers interview in different ways, and they all have their own style. They all have what's important to them. Some are great, some are clueless. That's another reason that you have to really be prepared when you go in for that job interview, because many times if you don't keep them on track, you're not going to get the information to them that you want them to have. Every person that you interview has an opinion about your handicaps. Anyone want to discuss our handicaps here? How many of you feel you have a handicap? Yeah. You know what your handicap is? Too young, too old, too much experience, not enough experience, too good looking, not good looking enough. And I always like saying too good looking because it always gets at least one chuckle, and it's a fact. Some people they'll just kick you out because of your appearance. So we all have handicaps, and it's important that we know what those handicaps are. If we feel that age is going to work against us, then we have to go in and be prepared to be youthful. And we have to look like, you know, we've still got a lot of energy, we've got a lot of life, we're vibrant, we have a lot of things going on. If you don't have experience, then don't have a lot of job experience, then you have to talk about all the things you've done while you were in school and in your part-time jobs and in anything else that you've done that applies to that job. So you need to be in touch with your handicaps. Preparation is essential before the interview. That's just one part of the interview, but organizations love to be loved. And I can tell you, Aaron can tell you, probably several people in this room that have hired people can tell you, it always amazes me when somebody comes in and they want the job, or they think they want the job, they really think they want the job, and they know nothing about what you do. And how you like, and it happens. You know, 10 minutes into the interview, you think you're interviewing a good candidate, and they say, well, just what do you do here? And I'm going, wow, if you don't know what we do here, why are you even here? I mean, You're looking for a job. You're not looking for a career opportunity. You're not looking to make anything. I mean, you're just looking for a paycheck. You need to know the company. You need to research that company. What's fun about that is many times if you do your research and do it thoroughly, you'll know more about the company than the person you're talking to. And that's kind of fun, as long as you don't say, how come you don't know that? But it's kind of fun when you say, you know, I understand you just went through a big merger, or you just had a record quarter. Those are all important things to be aware of. That means you're really following the company. Honor agreements. So you've prepared, you know everything about what the company does. You got the interview, and it's important when they confirm the interview that you say, how much time do I have? And they'll usually give you 15 minutes, 20 minutes. It'll be a 15-minute interview, 20-minute interview. So when you walk in and you meet the person that you're supposed to interview with, you ask them, now I understand I have 15 minutes, is that right? Well, probably 20, okay, 20. And you want to monitor that time, whether it's on your phone with your whatever it is, your lap counter. There are a lot of things you can do to trigger for 20 minutes, just a little buzz in your pocket. But at the end of that 20 minutes, so you have to keep pacing this thing. If you have things that you want to tell them, and they're not asking the right questions, you have to push to get all the information to them that you want to get to them. And if you've done a good job in your preparation, if you've done a good job in knowing about the company, if you're on target with the information you're providing to them, 20 minutes will turn into an hour if they're interested. They'll tell you 15 or 20 minutes, I'd like to keep it to that, but if they're interested in you, then they'll keep you a long time. But they also want to be able to turn you loose. If your time's up at 20 minutes, it may not have been a match. Just don't obsess about the time, but beware of it. They like that. I can tell you, I've been in sales all my life. We have a tendency to get wound up and talk too much. There's been a real emphasis in sales training the last 10 years on learning to listen. But it helps a lot when you go in and you say, you know, how much time do I have? If you're making a sales presentation. And in this case, you're making a sales presentation. You're selling you, you're the product. So if you thought you could never sell, you better get with it in a hurry, because this is the time you have to bring it all together. Interviewing is a lot like dating. You've heard me say that before here. But you know, you don't want to be offering a used car. You don't want to go in there and just start presenting the product. You want to be engaged. And you want to have the kind of conversation, you know, two people would normally have. You want to learn about each other. For those of you that, for those of you that are single and dating, you probably know a little bit about what I'm talking about. For those of you that can remember dating, you probably remember you don't want to do it again. But it's about information gathering. And people have a tendency to misrepresent who they are and what they are. And so you have to ask the right questions. If somebody makes a statement, you ask the company about what your responsibilities will be, or what's their attitude toward flex time. You want to dig into it a little bit. You want to really find out what their policies are. It's a data collecting process that you're involved in. You want to get as much data, and they want to get as much data as they come from you. But it's a two-way street. And if you're not asking the right questions, and if you're not following up with the questions similar to what they're asking, you're going to be in trouble. We all go in, Same thing happens on dating, by the way. So many times we meet somebody, they have a good personality, they kind of look like the person you think you would want to be with, but you don't know anything about them. They feel the same way about you, and they want to get to know you better, and so they go through this process of, they'll pretty well tell you anything just to have another date or have another meeting together. And we do that as employees, and employers do it as employers. It's important that you're on target and you know what it is you're looking for, or you're gonna, even if you get the job offer, you're gonna be looking for something else soon. You gotta be honest and straightforward with it. Now, this is the fun part, for me anyway, questions to expect and questions to ask. And the first question that the employer wants to know is, why are you here? And I want you to, on your notepad, if you'll just put a line in the middle, and I want you to put a question on the left side for employers, and then for employers' questions, and then on the right side, I want you to list the questions that you should be asking. Did you follow that? Okay, because it's kind of fun to watch these. The first one is, I want to know why you're here. Now, I probably, you walk in and you're going to interview with me, I'm probably going to say, well, what are you doing here? Why are you here? You know, but I do want to know why you're there. And so if they don't ask the right question right up front, you just say, Guy, I'm so excited about this interview. I'm so excited about meeting with you. Let me tell you why I'm here. You know, here's what I understand about this company. I've done a lot of research, and this is when you kind of unload that deal. I mean, you're having a record, you know, you promote from within, you've just had a record quarter, there's a lot of opportunity, you're growing, you're advancing, you're merging, you're buying people out. This is, you know, your work environment, your benefits, and go into some of the details. You know, I'm really excited about it. And that'll avoid them asking you the question of, why are you here? They'll know that you've really done your work and you have a strong interest in them. The next question is, what can you do for us? Now again, that question will probably be in the form of, tell me what you've done. But again, if you've done your research, you know what they're looking for, you know the job description, you've called people that work there, they've given you some insight about the culture and what the company's all about, you can be extremely prepared for this. I mean, they'll start asking you questions, and the best way to control that interview is, again, say, you're asking these questions. Let me just get a little clarification here. And you kind of quote the job description back to them. You can bring it in written back. Just kind of highlight the job description. You know, the job description, as I understand it, this is a job description. This is what you're looking for. And, you know, I think I can do that. However, is there anything else that you think I should be able to do? Is there anything else that you're looking for? Because you've prepared to answer those questions that are in the job description. But that was usually written by somebody other than the hiring manager. And if you're in front of the hiring manager, they probably have something much more important to them than that basic job description. They want to know a lot about, you know, your responsibility. Are you creative? Are you a leader? Are you a follower? So they're going to give you that guideline. So you've been studying yourself. You're so psyched up because when you started out, you thought, you know, all I can ever do is cashier at Walmart. And then you looked at all of your transferable skills and you realized you should probably be the president of FDR. Which on some days would probably be an improvement. But anyway, you go, you're all psyched up, you ask that question, what else do you need? Now, you already know what you're going to tell him, and he's going to give you, or she's going to give you, the questions or what is important to them, and you're going to call from this information that you know about yourself and directly answer those instead of doing like a shotgun approach. where you just start unloading your whole, we call it your sales bag. You just say, I want this job, and you can tell them why you fit and why you fit the job description, and then you tell them all the other great things about it. They've already told you when you ask that question what else is needed, that what they want to hear from you. So you're controlling the interview. You're helping make sure that you give them the answers if they apply to you. Next thing is, what kind of person are you? So that might be, what kind of environment do you like to work in? What kind of people do you like to work with? Are you somebody that works by the clock? Are you somebody that likes flex time? But again, if you've done your research, you know pretty much what the culture of the company is. You'll know if they have flex time, you'll know if they have vacations and all those things. So you talk about, I really believe in going the extra mile and da-da-da-da-da. You talk to those points. The fourth question is, what makes you different from the other 500 applicants? And this is the important one. So so far you've told them about all the things you do. You've told them how you're a perfect match. You've told them how you're beyond a perfect match because you can do all the things beyond what's in the job description that they're looking for. So now you really need to start talking about how you exceed. And maybe to help you get there, you ask them the question, well, let me ask you, what did the last person that had this position, what happened to them? They got promoted, if that's the case. If it's not the case, then you say, has anyone ever been promoted from this position? What did they possess that set them apart from the others? And the way you ask these questions is really kind of crucial. You can't be nonchalant. You have to be very direct about it, and you shouldn't be uncomfortable with it. Most interviewers, when you don't want to totally control that interview, but at the same time, when you ask those kind of questions, the interviewer goes, wow. And I'm telling you, this is not common. Most people do not do this. And the people that I've worked with where they've been my clients, every time they can get themselves to the point of following these 5 steps, they call up and they're all excited. Or they go on an interview and I said, how did it go? It didn't go real well. Well, did you ask them this? Did you ask them this? Did you ask them this? Well, no, there wasn't an opportunity to do it. As a matter of fact, the interviewer was so messed up, I had no idea what they were talking about. That happens. But if you ask those questions, you keep that person on tap and you stay where you should be. Now, if you've done all 4 of those steps perfectly and really rocked their boat, their next question is, can I afford you?
Can you what?
Can I afford you? Because not only have you met all of the criteria in their job description, but plus you can do all of the unwritten things that they would like to have out of you, and you have a lot of talent similar to the last person that got promoted in this position. So you may say, well, why do you want to know about the next person that got promoted? Or you may say, why do I want to know about that? Well, first of all, it allows you to tell them a little bit more about yourself. But the other thing is it lets them know that you're not looking for a job, you're looking for a career, if that's your goal. But when you ask those kind of questions, if you answer those kind of questions that way, you've pretty well sold them that you're a strong candidate, even if you don't have all of the skills. But they like your work ethic, they like your style, they like the fact that you've shown the initiative to research the company, they like the fact that you can do the job. So, if all of those things are where they should be, your concern going in there is, am I going to get the salary for this position that I want? And you're now at a point where, can I afford you? And you're in a much better place. Now, let's look at the other side of that line that you drew down the The questions you should ask, and put it on the same line as the employer's questions, but what does this job involve? Now, if you'll notice, why are you here? What does this job involve? That kind of dovetails together. You want to know the same thing that they want to know. You want to know what you're going to be doing there. You've told them, you've looked at the posting, you've told them your understanding of the job. So, and then you're saying, what else? So that is, what does this job involve? Don't you want to know that? If you don't ask that question, you end up with a bad date. What are the skills a top employee in this job would have to have? That's your second question. His second question, or her second question, is, what can you do for us? What are the skills a top employer in this job would have to have? And I've kind of been giving these to you as I've been going through their questions. The third question is, are these the kind of people I want to work with? And that matches with what kind of person are you. So as you're telling them the things that are important to you, and hopefully it's a match, they can let you know how well you match up to that. They can let you know what their policies are and their procedures are and the kind of people that work with, and you keep working it. Fourth question is, if I work here, what can I say that might set me apart? In other words, you got your job description, you have all these other things, you know, you're going to see about 100 people, or you've got it down from 100 people to 20 people. And so I assume these are your 20 top candidates out of 100. You know, what is that person going to have that sets them apart from everyone else? And again, you're asking those questions that help guide you through the interview process. And what's your fifth question? Can I persuade them to hire me at the salary I want? And like I say, if you've done a great job in preparing for this, you're going to be in the top 2 or 3 for sure. You're going to have a good shot at it. And depending on how well your competition has prepared, you know, it goes nicely. Now, it's fun to talk about this. We mentioned in the letter, we've got a guest tonight, and his name is Aaron Goldsmith. Aaron and I met, we met in 2008. And my company actually recruited Aaron to come to work for First National Bank Merchant Solutions. And by coincidence, my company had me working there also. And we got to know each other pretty well, and we had the same kind of responsibilities. Aaron is one of those guys that just immediately, I was just blown away with his focus and his organization and how young he was. I've been out there in the workforce forever, and I have yet to meet anyone that has any more maturity than Aaron does for his age. Anyway, I moved on, and not long after that, Aaron said he was kind of looking to make a change. And that's kind of interesting because he was named Region Manager of the Year for the entire United States. He received all sorts of accolades, and that wasn't tripping his trigger. It wasn't the work environment that he thought he really wanted to work in. Making more money than he thought he would. He probably, of the 5 region managers, was making more than any of the rest of us, and we all had him by 10 or 15, 20, 30 years as senior, depending on which one of us it was. And it wasn't about money, it was about the opportunity. So I had a guy, I was kind of launching this program that I have right now, and I needed all sorts of new collateral material. I needed business cards, I needed signage, I needed a lot of different things, and I was working with this guy, and he said, I know you used to be a headhunter, and he said, I'm looking for a guy. I'd give anything if I could find a guy that could sell printing for me that knows something about financial, but the important thing is that they have printing experience. And he kept going and going and going, and I said, I think I might have somebody. He said, I don't know, man. This guy's about 60. He said, I've been looking for this person for about 8 years. I said, I think I have the right guy for you. And went home and called up Aaron and told him about it. He goes, I don't know anything about printing. I said, well, you didn't know anything about credit card processing when you came to work for the bank. You sell, whatever you do, you're good at it. And I said, if nothing else, I think your personalities are going to match. So rather than steal Aaron's thunder, I'm going to have Aaron come up here and tell you about his experience and what worked for him. Flip up here, man.
Thank you, Larry. Do you want me to clip this on? Is that what this is?
Aaron didn't want me to tell his age, but he just turned 21.
Yeah. I wish. Well, I appreciate you letting me come and visit with you tonight. Larry's told me about this group, and I'm a little concerned as I kind of go through this. As I was just thinking, this sounds and appears to be a pretty structured program, and Larry kind of alluded to the science, but behind finding a job. So I'm a little concerned if I may take you down a path tonight that might not fit the program, but here we go anyway. So Larry did mention he wanted me to talk. He needed somebody to come and talk about salary negotiating or negotiation, and I know Larry's got a lot of connections in this town and a lot of experts on this topic. Unfortunately, they were all busy, so you have me. But I don't know, as I thought about this, salary negotiation to me is really about value creation, creating value. It just sounds a little less intimidating, and it sounds a little more practical to me. How do I, if I'm a strong candidate or in the running for a job, I'm a pretty competitive person. So my mind immediately goes to how do I create more value for myself than somebody else that's interviewing for the same position, or really, create so much value for that organization or perceived value that they couldn't imagine not having me as an employee. So that's kind of a cool way to, I thought, cool way to think about it, and it kind of takes some of the pressure off anyway, and gives you, a different way to think about it. So, the goal then becomes, how do I create value for myself? And of course, the first thing I would say is honesty is really important, right? Because you can create value by stretching the truth and fabricating, some transferable skills or experiences, but certainly that doesn't do you or the employer any bit of good. Where do you start creating value? I think obviously the interview is, I think interviews are intimidating, or they can be at times, and you kind of feel like you're under the lamp, right? I think Larry kind of talked about, the reciprocity, if you will, of an interview, and having it be a two-way deal. I think that's where it really starts in creating value. It's really in your mind going in and with a good needs assessment, right? So you're interviewing them. I mean, you really want to understand, and Larry talked about so many of those things, and we didn't even really rehearse this, but it's understanding what's going on with their organization, hot topics, current events, recent successes, but really doing everything you can to learn about that company's culture. That's huge. successes, failures, needs, wants, etc. And there's so many sources for that information. I mean, finding people on LinkedIn, right, that may have worked there at one time or know somebody, just doing a lot of, internet research, reading the newspaper. I mean, it's just exhausting every possible resource you can to learn as much as you possibly can about that opportunity. So just really focus is key. Locking into that one opportunity where you think you've got a shot at it, and really digging deep and trying to learn as much as you can outside through your own research, but also through that interview process. So really, then it comes down to let's apply all this knowledge you have now, right? I mean, you've been through the interview, you've shared information about yourself, but you've been intentional about asking good questions, finding out as much as you can through the interview and outside. Now it's time to put this, and I call it a business case, right? It's how do I take all that information that I've gathered, my skills, my transferable skills, my experience, and convert this into a document that demonstrates how I can help them in any number of ways, right? And whether you're in business development or purchasing or customer service or any number of areas, how do I help this company, increase revenue, reduce costs, improve the customer experience, right? And I mean, there's a million different examples, again, based on what area you're in, but really sort of getting down to that. How can I make a measurable impact with this organization? It's got to be honest. It's got to be well thought out. It needs to be very specific. And I just think that my experiences in an example, I'll share you a little more detail about that experience Larry talked about, but there's several others. That has worked very well for me. And I call it a business case. You can kind of call it whatever you want, but as you've gone through a couple interviews or two and you get down to the point where it is about salary negotiating, I just think that's the kind of extra effort. It's the kind of activity that I think really can separate a person from the pack and really create a lot of value. Does that make sense? Any questions on that? Or
what if they ask you about salary and they say, well, right now I'd rather not talk about it, and they get to the point where they want to push you? Come on, tell us a little bit about what you want.
Mm-hmm.
Well, right now I'm just getting started, and I just the first interview with you, and I'm just not. Right now I don't want to talk about it, or you don't want to explain to them how much you want.
Right.
At this moment.
Yeah, it's a great question. I'll answer that, and then if Larry or anybody else disagrees, you can sure jump in. But I mean, I think you've got to answer the question, right? And at some point, you have to answer the question. And one way I've answered that question is, you can give them a range, that gives you some flexibility, right? I've answered that before, and Larry kind of mentioned this before. I think I learned this from him, but it's, in my case, it's like, this is really more about the opportunity maybe than the salary, based on where you're at in the interview process. I think that's a pretty fair response. And so I don't know, is there anything else that you think would be appropriate?
Yeah, I just applied somewhere and I had to go through the online part of it. And they, under the salary, they listed the salary as to be determined, what this position paid. So then when it asks about my salary requirements, I put down to be determined.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's a fact. You know, all of us, most of the people here have been around a little while, and we need benefits. Some of us may not need benefits, but we need some flex time because of family situations. There are so many different things that each one of us need that salary is one of the things. And I think I mentioned to you last week, the answer to the salary to have in the back of your head is what do you absolutely have to pay the bills and be able to go to a couple of movies and buy new tires for the car so that you're comfortable and you can enjoy the job. And if you can get that, not that you shouldn't have more than that, but if you can get that and everything else is perfect, then it's worth proving yourself to the company. But I think, Aaron, the salary negotiation, a big part of it is that you're hung up on the two terms. The stuff that I just went through is really salary negotiation. Because everyone's got a range as to what they can hire you at. So Aaron's talking about creating value, and if you're selling yourself well, you've created value in yourself. I mean, and we'll get into a little bit more as to why that value means so much to them. But Aaron, I don't know if you plan on doing this, but what I really would like you to walk them through is your interview with Steve.
Yep.
And you know, everything was there but salary.
Yeah, I mean, I
In fact,
think,
you were way off.
right, I think that will kind of answer your question. Go ahead.
Yeah, and rather than give them specific numbers or a range, is it okay to do a pushback depending on how early it is in this negotiation? Okay, the pushback I would like to use would be to say, well, I expect and hope to be paid what the responsibility and work ethic requires.
Yeah, yep.
Is that fair enough, or is it
Sure.
is it arrogant to do that?
No.
Yep. Yeah, in this example, Larry wanted me to bring up, it was this company, you know, he kind of teed it up. So I went to the interview, and it was a personality match. I knew nothing about the industry, but there was some characteristics of the company itself that were attractive to me. The opportunity was attractive. I mean, honestly, it was a great match, and we went through this interview process, and it's, you know, really early on in the process. It was the first interview. It kind of came down to, you know, what are your salary requirements, and I answered it honestly, and you know, this guy was like, the base salary was probably half of what my requirements were, and so we just sort of agreed to leave it there, and maybe we would talk again, maybe not, right? And so I got in my car and called Larry immediately, and I was, you know, frustrated to some extent, but you know.
You had stronger language in that.
Yeah, possibly. But so, you know, at the end of the day, I really wanted the job, you know. I just liked a lot about it. I saw the opportunity. I wanted that job. And so Larry and I went to work, and essentially what we did, I guess, you know, the first thing I did is I did a tremendous amount of research on the industry, the company, all the things we kind of talked about. Went to work with Larry, and essentially what we drafted up was it was a business development role, a 30, 90, 6-month, and 12-month plan that we developed, and basically it was me outlining in very specific time periods what I was going to do, what are goals that I'm assigning for myself, what is my action plan, the things that I'm going to do to achieve those, when I'm going to achieve them by. I started making some calls into past clients that I would, or connections, people I was networked with that had the potential to be customers. They were prospects. Called them, explained them what I was looking to do, and just asked them flat out, if I were to take this job, would you see me? You know, would you take a meeting for me to come in and talk about these products with you? And they said yes. So what I was essentially able to go back to the owner with was basically a 12-month plan, saying, Steve, this is what I can do for you. This is how, you know, I plan to do it. This is when I plan to do it by. Here's a list of people you can sure call. So, I mean, it's like references on steroids, right? I mean, these weren't people that were just going to call and tell them I was a good guy, and they saw me in church every once in a while on Sundays, and we grew up together, or you know, whatever. I mean, these were people that I'd had business relationships with that were willing to see me. So, I mean, that was really powerful stuff, and I ended up taking the job, and he actually paid me more than I had even asked. And I think, you know, again, I say that only because we developed one heck of a good plan. And I think, you know, I say this, you know, trying to maintain humility, certainly, but I think that the document, the plan we created was so good, I don't think he could imagine not hiring me. And it worked out well. Now, as I was sitting here listening to Larry, I actually thought about another example where I did this, and it actually didn't work out so well. I actually felt it was probably my best effort of all time in terms of doing research and preparation and planning. And I mean, this thing was airtight. I had gone in for like 3 interviews, and I was so certain I was going to get a job offer. I had all but drafted my resignation letter at my current employer, and I can remember the HR manager called me and told me they were going to pursue other candidates, and I was so surprised. I called the owner that afternoon and said, I think there's been some form of miscommunication between your HR department, and he said, actually, no, there's no miscommunication. So I mean, you know, it's just, you know, so it doesn't work every time. It's I think it gives you a tremendous opportunity to get the most, create value for yourself. And again, it's not going to be a perfect fit with every opportunity, but I think those are some things that I found have been successful for me. Yep.
I think with the series of interviews you have for a job, obviously there's a procedure companies like to follow. A lot of it has to do with weeding. And you're weeding out candidates that might be just too expensive for your job.
Sure.
So initially you get that first interview with an HR type person, and they're probably going to ask where you need to be.
Mm-hmm.
And I always like to tickle the heck out of that, because I'm talking to somebody that obviously knows what the salary range is, but I really don't want to scare him or her.
Sure. Right. You kind of want to stay in the game, right? And you want to.
That's my question.
Right.
How do you know what ballpark figure are we looking at?
Right. Right. I don't know if there's a perfect answer for that. I mean, it's. I think you've got to be realistic with some kind of range. My example might be a little bit extreme, and it was a smaller company that might not have been, you know, so structured. But so I think you live inside ranges, and you're a realist. But right, I mean, I think you kind of get a feel for, you know, what the opportunity is, and you know, if you think you can have an impact there, and if the answer is yes, I think you stay in the game long enough, and it's sort of hard, right? And I think I think that's a really good point. And I was thinking about this earlier as I was sitting over there. You know, there are times when you get in interview processes where they are extremely structured, and it's like, how does this whole thing work? You know, there's, like, when do you when do you present this business case or what have you? And again, I think you become as resourceful as possible. And I think if you feel strongly enough about it, and you've put forth the effort and the time and the effort to put together a plan and document these things, do whatever it takes to get it to the hiring manager or the person that it's going to mean something to. Did somebody back here, did you have a question?
A lot of questions that have been fronted are, what salary do you want? Or what salary do you currently make right now?
Mm-hmm.
Well, if one of the things, and I will go back and research it, that I read last night on LinkedIn was that, what are you making now? My financial advisor wouldn't let me tell you, was the response in that particular article. But you simply look at them and say, I plan to make industry standard. My research of the industry for this type of position is, I throw out a range. Now, is that your range? And I simply turn it around with a question. What's the range of the salary of the position?
Yep.
And say, okay, we can talk.
Right.
Put that off to the end of the interview, because that's not important at that time.
Mm-hmm.
The importance of the job interview is, do we fit together? Do we want to dance later?
Yeah, well said. Yeah.
And if that's one of the first 5 questions that come, or first 3 questions that comes out of the interviewer's mouth, then they're simply checking off a list.
Sure.
And to me, those are, that shows me that they really are simply trying to follow some arbitrary rule given to them to follow. And I'm not the kind of person that wants to follow the rule.
Mm-hmm.
1. And 2, what do they care what I make right now? That's personal. I don't tell them who I date. I happen to be married, but they don't know my wife's name either, right? And, you know, all that stuff can come out maybe later, right? But let's make sure that the skill set is right. Let's make sure that what they want and what I want work together, and we can play together.
Mm-hmm.
Then, okay, later on, okay, well, it looks like we want to go get in the same sandbox together. Okay, now we'll talk salary.
Sure.
I always try to push it off with that kind of thing. What's your range? Let's talk later. We're okay at this point. So
That comes back to my question earlier too, is that he's right in some respects that there's a certain point where it's too early to talk about money, although some interviewers want to push it to the front of the list, don't they?
Right.
And so if you feel that question's too early in the list, is it legitimate to push back and say, sir, I don't believe this is the appropriate time to talk about that? Is it?
I don't know that I'd approach it that way, but I'd just say, again, what I said before, we all get intimidated by this, and the fact is there's so many other factors. So I'd say, well, we can talk about that, but right now I'm just trying to learn about the job. If they're pushing so hard for you to give a figure, more than likely, I mean, first of all, they're not very good at their job.
Okay.
And they're trying to screen you out early. They're sizing you up, and maybe you have on a nicer sweater or a nicer sport coat than they've ever owned, and so they're going, well, I can't afford this guy, or whatever it is. But I would just say I'm looking for an opportunity. That's the best answer. But what do you want? What do you want? You know, I want a great package. I want a company that I look forward to going to work to every day. I want a place where I can grow. I've done a lot of things in the past. I've made a lot of money, but I still haven't found the job that's just absolutely perfect for me, where I can really do my thing.
Okay. Yeah.
And don't
Some
forget.
of them are still going to hang in there with you, and give me an answer.
And I think just one thing to keep in mind, just from my example, whether it's worth a darn or not, I don't know, but I got screened out, right? I really did. And I left that interview having gotten screened out, but I felt so strongly about the opportunity that I decided to stay with it a little bit longer. And So that's what I would just encourage you guys to do is, if you feel strongly enough about a company, a position, fight for it, put some thought into it, put some creativity into it, and I think you'd be surprised what can come out of it. So I think Larry, are you coming to hook me?
Well, we've got a couple. But what was your? You know how big I am on transferable skills.
Yeah.
Not letting your job title define who you are. What was your job title? Your first job title? Checking.
I don't know, like print management specialist or something like that.
So selling checks. And the next thing is he goes from there to regional.
At the bank?
Yeah.
Okay, yep.
Regional manager, selling credit card processing. From there he goes to selling printed products, and he didn't quite get the connection there in that the guy who thought he could do the owner of this company thought he could do a lot of business with the financial services industry. So Aaron had the financial services industry, but he didn't have the printing part of it. And Aaron got in there right away and went out and found out there really wasn't a market for the financial part of the business. And so he started focusing on selling packaging, which this guy had never really done much of before, and ended up getting some very, very large accounts. And to the point where this company, how old is the company? It's about 30 years?
20.
20-year-old company owned, family owned, and Aaron was there about a year and a half and they made him president. And then Aaron, being the kind of guy he is, after a year and a half they couldn't live up to his expectations. What are you selling now, Aaron?
So I quit. This is actually a really funny pattern that my wife is not finding so funny these days. But I get bored really easily, and so anyway, actually now I work for a company that we trade the byproducts out of ethanol plants, so ethanol plant byproducts. So again, it's
Feedlots.
it's.
So you can see how easily all that connects. It's a logical connection. And the thing, this is the most modest I've seen Aaron. It's just pretty unusual, but he
What's that supposed to mean, Larry?
well, you're being a little humble. I mean, he said, the key thing he said to you that we keep trying to really push in this group is he decided he wanted the job. He researched it and decided he wanted the job. Most of us look for a job. He decided he wanted the job. And so even, he pushed so hard in terms of how he is qualified. When the guy in the printing company says, well, you're not qualified because I can only afford to pay you about a third of the salary you want. And we go back and he creates value by coming up with this list of names and numbers. I can get in to see all these people, you call anyone on this list. And if I remember, his response is, this is going to cost me, isn't it?
I got to tell one more quick funny thing that, what I'm doing today, this was so far out of left field for me, but I really wanted this job, and I liked the guys and that started this company, and I had some common acquaintances that were involved, and somebody that was on the board, and anyway, I go to interview for this job, and these guys are cowboys. I mean, it's a unbelievable company, but they're in the livestock industry and heavy in ag, and they just didn't know if they could hire me because I wore a V-neck sweater to the interview, right? It just, and it's just. So, it's just, and so they just, there was some concern, about the cultural fit, and I sold that hard. I wanted the job, And I mean, I had to go to work and get creative on how am I going to sell around my handicap, which was not that I was too good looking, but I guess it was because I wore V-neck sweaters that day. But 30 more seconds. There was one thing I just thought was really important that, and that you're probably really bored with me at this point, but
You can have 3 or 4 minutes.
okay. Larry wanted me to talk just briefly about networking. Man, I am a huge believer in networking. I hate to do it. I'm not good at it. I'm intimidated by it. I'm actually pretty introverted. Whether you believe it or not, I don't do well networking, but thanks to Larry, I forced myself to network everywhere I could through the chamber. And so, as an example, one thing, this is awesome. Larry had a guy that he was working with that did this, and there was another guy here in town that I was aware of that was, this guy's a CEO, I won't mention his name, but he's a CEO of a pretty major company in Omaha, and he had been wildly successful in several other industries. He's not from Omaha. He sold some companies, and he's a very young guy, moved to Omaha, wasn't working, didn't need to work, but got really bored, and I think his wife was getting sick of him being around home, so he had to go meet people, right? And he made a goal it was like he wanted to have lunch, in his case, with 100 CEOs in 100 days or something, or whatever. It was crazy, and obviously this guy could do that. But I mean, that was hard to do, right? I mean, how do you meet that many people and schedule that many appointments and make that happen? So I thought, I'm going to try this. I obviously didn't have the time or the resources to do it the way he did it, but I set a goal of like 30 or something like that. I wanted to meet with 30 people, executives, in 6 months or something like that. It was a little more realistic. It was unbelievable. It's really hard. So just apply that to, again, whatever industry you're in or whoever, and they don't have to be in your industry. It's just networking, right? And people in Omaha, if you're from here, you probably get it. If you're not originally, I mean, I think it's true. People in this town want to help. People will meet with you. Be honest with them. Pick out a couple people, whether it's in an industry that you're interested in, or people that are just influencers or in the community, people you admire, somebody you read about in the newspaper. It doesn't matter. Pick up the phone and call them and say, my name is Aaron Goldsmith. I am looking to do XYZ with my career. I'm looking for some advice and guidance. I saw you in the newspaper. I heard about you from this. I follow you from that. Would you give me 10 minutes? I'm telling you, you think it's crazy. People will agree to meet with you. Like I mean, people are way too trusting in this town that you could be a crazy stalker, but I mean, people will meet with you and they will give you honest advice. But here's the most important part about that meeting. When you're done, ask them, hey, is there anybody else you think I should meet with to have a similar conversation with? You have no idea how many people you will meet in this town, how quickly, how many job opportunities you will learn about that you never knew existed. It's unbelievable. Unbelievable. I can tell you, I sell ethanol. I trade byproducts out of ethanol plants because I network with people that knew a guy that knew a guy. I ended up sitting in a guy that's worth $1 billion office that it's like, why is this guy meeting with me, right? And he introduces me to a couple guys on his board and it's wild. And I'm just thinking, why do these people have any interest in me? And it's fun. You'll meet people. Yes?
I'm really not that smart. I'm fascinated by your story, but I can't remember any of it. You gave 3 questions. Will you please repeat them all? Who do you know that I can talk to? That was the last one.
Yeah, so...
that can help.
I don't know.
At the end, right?
Is there anyone else that I can contact?
Right. That's key. Yeah, just asking them, can I,
Give me 10 minutes.
right, just be really honest with them, right?
Well, here's what I want to do.
Right? Explaining to them, hey, I'm Aaron. Here's what I do. I'm looking to make a change. I heard about you or read about you, or can I have 15 minutes to ask you a few questions?
So when you presented your case, in what format was it? Was it PowerPoint, was it a bunch of papers?
No, it's just I just try to keep it simple. Just it was a one-page, sheet. That worked for me.
Was it on a napkin?
It's a good idea, but no, it wasn't. It just was a one-page sheet. So I'm probably not that good to pull it off on a napkin.
I do napkins.
That's Larry's forte.
I don't get the kind of offers he does.
Anything else? Questions? Yep. Okay. Thank you. Yep. You bet.
It's kind of the connection that Aaron and I mean, I met him because my company was recruiting him for the bank, as I stated early on, and we've hit it off, and our business relationship has turned into a good friendship and a much more in-depth relationship. But Aaron is more than, well, he's less than half my age. And I hope that Aaron learns from me, but I learn from him all the time. The guy he's just the real deal. He has that. I was always driven in business, but Aaron keeps that balance between business, his family, his spiritual life. And he told me walking in, he's fallen a little behind on the physical fitness part of it. But he's pretty dedicated to keeping all four of those quadrants in his life in balance, and that's a real art. I've got some follow-up stuff for this. Where we are right now, this whole interview process that I talked to you about, Aaron gave you some examples of how he did it. It was really about the passion and the research and knowing what he could do and what he wanted to do. And no matter what the opportunity was, he knew he could find out how to do it. So we're going to have some follow-up. Next week, I'd like you to, well, I'll take a couple questions now. Have you got any more questions? Yeah.
I have one. When you have an interview that seems to go really well, and you do your thing, they say they'll get back to you in 3 weeks, and you haven't heard. Do you call them? And if so, what do you say? Or do you just...
I was hoping we would get that covered today, but as we go through these interview tips, one of the last things that you do at the end of the interview process, you ask a couple more questions, and that is, are you the person that has the power to hire me? That's number one. Number two, when will you be making this decision? And you write that down. Make it very clear right in front of them. Write it down. You want them to know you're writing it down. And because your next question is it okay if I call you if I haven't heard from you at that time? And that, again, you go, well, what does all that mean? It means a lot, because if you call them back and you haven't had this conversation, you're nagging them and you're being a pest or you're desperate. But you ask them when they were going to make a decision. They hadn't thought about it until you ask them to begin with. And then you've asked them if it's okay. Now, because I taught this for a long time before I went to work for First National Bank, I was hiring all these people, and several of them did that to me. They said, when will you be making your decision? And I would say, okay, I give them a date. And I'd go back to my office and have 10,000 emails, after I'd been on the road for a week. And I'd get all caught up in that and everything, and all of a sudden it would seem like the next day I'd get a phone call, and 2 weeks had gone by and they're asking me about the job. And I immediately, there's another trick that goes with that we'll talk about next week, but I immediately, because they called back based on the time frame, I first of all was disappointed that I let myself down and felt much more compelled to maybe favor them, because rather than look like I had no idea what I wanted to do, just to save face, and if I thought they were a good candidate, that might be the candidate that I hired. But those kind of things, there are just some things that you instinctively know when you're in sales, and if you're not in sales, that's one of the reasons we get into the details. So all of you have got there's a wide age group here. You've all had different levels of experience in a lot of different fields, and everything's just a little bit different, but the fundamentals are the same. And you're not being pushy if you ask for permission.
So if I've already done it and haven't asked for permission, should I just wait?
You called them back?
No.
Oh.
No, I haven't, but it's about the time frame.
Yeah, I would call them back, and then in that particular case, you just remind them. You know, when we met, you mentioned that you'd have a decision. I was wondering how that was coming. If I was still in the hunt. Any other questions before we wrap up?
Hey Larry, somebody mentioned thank you cards. I don't know who that was, or a thank you note or something. I love thank you, handwritten, everything. One thing, when I was really focused on networking, you know, it was about, and I'm sure you've talked about this, Larry, it's about branding myself. And so one thing I did was, I thought was, I don't know if it made a difference, but I thought it was it differentiated myself. I went to, I think it was Vista Print, and even though I worked for a printing company, I went to Vista Print. It's kind of funny, but you know, they have like really cool templates. So like, go out there and look at all the different pre-designed templates and find something cool that represents you and maybe the industry you're in or whatever, but get some stationery, some thank you cards, some letterhead. I mean, you don't have to go crazy and buy 10,000 everything. Buy 50, right? And it just, I mean, you write, you send somebody a thank you note or a card, you know, with your own professional business card on a customized thank you card deal envelope with, you know, whatever. It's just, I think it's a real deal. I think people don't do that. Very few people take the time to write handwritten thank you cards. Even fewer people have their own personal branded stationery, and it just, I think it differentiates you.
When 5 or 6 years ago, when we were working together and I had a lot of candidates out there, the ones that sent a card to me, they usually, if they knew to send a card, then they would make some reference to a connection we might have made on a personal level. Or, you know, I hope your fishing trip went well, or whatever it is. And I would put that card on my desk, and that helped me. I'd put a date on it too. The date would be the time I told them I'd get back to them. Those are the people that I remembered to follow up with, because they followed with me and said, you know, I'm looking forward to hearing from you by this date. So that a card is really important. People just don't do it anymore. They emails get lost. I mean, you just, I don't have a business now where I have a bunch of employees, and I'm amazed at how many emails I have every morning just with LinkedIn and some of my personal connections. So, anything else? Okay, next week we're gonna follow up to where we're gonna follow up and finish out these tips on interviewing. When Aaron's gone, you can ask if he was really telling the truth or not, and then I really hope that we can get done in about 30, 35 minutes next week so that we can have answers or question and answer sessions. So go back over your notes. For those of you that have been here the whole time, go over your notes and let's have some fun next week. Thank you.
Give Laura a big hand, please. Yeah. This guy. Thanks, Laura. Appreciate it, brother. I don't need that, so you can take that. My voice is loud enough.